Hello everyone and welcome to Writing 311, Writing for the Workplace at Northwest Christian University. I wanted to create a quick video about writing emails in a professional context. The first thing to say is that the professional email, is perhaps the most powerful tool for writing that you'll use. In my own career, just over the last decade and a half or so, I've experienced so many different scenarios where crafting the correct email for the situation has, won the deal or gotten that entrance into graduate school, or et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's an art that is often neglected when it's more powerful than many things that are given more time. So I wanted to spend just a few minutes giving a few tips that I've learned over the years. So with that, first of all, I'm going to get rid of this picture-in-picture if I can. No, I can't. You're stuck with me. Okay, so just a few tips as we go. To start with, don't take a single email for granted. Every single thing that you write has your name on it, and is an example of you and your professionalism or your sensitivity, whatever the case may be, to your recipient. Okay, so every single email, don't take it for granted. There's no reason to. It just takes a few more seconds to make sure there's no typos. It just takes a few more seconds to format it correctly. It just takes a few more seconds to read it through kind of out loud in your head and make sure that it sounds kind of engaging, those sorts of things. So don't take it for granted. So the first step in crafting an email is to use the appropriate greeting. You'll notice, I'm writing this to myself here, you'll notice that I have a subject line. You should always have a subject line, and it should be pertinent to what you're doing and not sound spammy or be too generic or whatever. Now, on greeting, so many people write emails from their phones or whatever, and that's great. But there's some things that the more you do business with a variety of people, you realize that there's kind of a spectrum of formality. The most formal being, "Dear James, I've noted," whatever. Next, being something along the lines of, "James, I noticed," right? And then perhaps, "Hello, James. How are," And then, "Hi, James." And hi is fine. It might sound a little informal, but after you've established contact with somebody, or even at the beginning, if it's not in some critically formal situation, you can use hi. However, using hey, although appropriate in some circumstances, is the kind of thing that you should wait to use until you're confident that you're in the right situation to do so, if that makes sense. And you'll be able to judge that. I think most people err on the side of not providing a greeting at all and just sort of starting like this. "What is the due date for that one assignment?" or whatever. I'm reading out loud. And I don't personally mind very much. It's hard as a professor and a professional to get me riled up in very many ways. But even then, it kind of comes across as, well, you're kind of assuming that I won't mind. When you could have called me, "Dear Dr. Watson" or "Dear Professor Watson." I don't care, but it tells me something about the writer, right? That they're willing to assume that the recipient won't care. And so, again, this is not about me. This is about your professional futures. And so always err on the other side. Let them say, "Oh, don't call me that. Call me James," or whatever the case may be, right? So use the appropriate greeting. And you can always start here and then ratchet it down as invited or whatever, okay? And then, also sign off. So it's just an email, right? You're writing it on your phone. Take a few more seconds, blah, 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 blah. and create the format. It just that little bit of effort of creating the structure within your email to kind of look like a letter, just like that, um, does so much. If you just write blah 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 like that, you've just established that, okay, we're taking this down a few levels of professionalism. And if 3 different potential vendors are pursuing me for business in what I do or whatever, and one of them is taking the time to create a structure that feels a little more thoughtful, and that's going to carry some weight. But again, this all depends on the rhetorical situation, and that's a term that has a lot of complexity to it, so I'm not going to get into it. But the rhetorical situation is everything that goes into the creation of the text, namely the email in this case, or the resume, or the LinkedIn account, whatever. The text that you're writing, that everything that tells you what you ought to do there, that's the rhetorical situation. And there's a number of elements to it, but 2 of the elements are the audience and the occasion. Okay, so for example, for the LinkedIn profile that you're creating, or that you created, or that you're creating, that is for a general professional audience. There isn't really much of an occasion. The occasion is networking, or getting your name out there, or something like that. However, with an email, you'll need to know specifically, who is this person? Why am I writing to them? Am I approaching them to do me a favor, or are they asking me for a favor? In which case, you are in the position of power, although one oughtn't to think of it into sort of those ways, I guess. But keep all those things in mind. Who are you writing to? What's the occasion? That's the rhetorical situation, and that should inform what you do with your dear, or your hello, hi, hey, right? Okay, got that. Next, tact. Now, this word, and I'm saying for this tip, I'm saying you ought to use tact. That might seem obvious, but for some people, perhaps they're not very sensitive themselves, and they just think, I can just say whatever I want. No, use some tact. Don't be too blunt. Be cautious in bringing up what you want to bring up. And on the other hand, part of tact is not being lengthy. Don't waste the other person's time. Be concise, but don't just be like, can I get those specs right now? People will be like, I've got other things to do. Or, you're welcome. Use tact. That gets things done. Okay. But be short and to the point. Now, here's another thing as far as structure that might not be obvious. I'm typing it for you. So let's go through this. When in the body of your email, we're assuming not some huge tome that you need to write for some purpose. But in the body of your email, it's good to start with something positive, just briefly. Don't spend a paragraph praising them, right? But something briefly positive, like, hope you're enjoying the nice weather these days, or whatever, or even positive, but maybe kind of joint complaining, whatever. It's building rapport. I should write that here. So, hope you're surviving the heat, whatever, or really excited about the progress we're making on the film project for X, whatever. That doesn't have to be long, because if they're waiting for, why did you write? Okay, so get right to it. Now we're going to pause here, because my screen sharing app only allows me 10 minutes, and we're at 9:55, so we'll be back in a second.